So one of the omnipresent questions, and I thank Max for raising this in chat. One of the omnipresent questions with Bethesda and Xbox in general has been kind of the new guard. Who's going to be taking over when some of these core designers leave in the future? And probably the most pertinent and topical one is Todd Howard. I mean, he is a person with a lot of responsibility, a lot of power, a lot of say. He's involved in a lot of stuff at Bethesda Softworks, no longer just Bethesda Game Studios. It used to be that he just did Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and that's what they did. Now he's, of course, gone into a new IP with Starfield, but he also is involved as an executive producer on a lot of other projects, whether it's their mobile games or if it's also with Indiana Jones. He's an executive producer there. So he is a very busy guy. He's doing quite well for himself. He makes good money doing what he's doing. He probably got a fat payout when they sold to Microsoft. So he's doing fine. But as a result of all of this, there's a lot of discussion as to whether he retires or if he retires. So this was, all of these articles are either right after Starfield or right before Starfield came. But one of the things that happened was that Bethesda marketing exec Pete Hines retired after 24 years at the company. And if you don't remember this guy, you probably weren't seeing the presentations. He was at pretty much all of the presentations for like a decade. He was involved previously with just Bethesda Game Studios, and then he climbed the ranks within Bethesda Softworks, and then he eventually became like the head of marketing or head of publishing within Bethesda Softworks, and then decided to retire. Yeah, he said he'll begin exploring a new chapter of my life, exploring interests, passions, donating my time where I can, and taking more time to enjoy life. This was not a decision I came to easily or quickly, but after an amazing career culminating in the incredible launch of Starfield, it feels like the time is right, and so he's stepping away. And you know what? Good for him. He made probably a good amount of money, and then he's got enough money for retirement, and he just wants to enjoy the rest of his life instead of grinding in the corporate machine. That's totally fine. And the other thing is, things change a lot when you go from working at a relatively small company to being acquired by a multi-trillion-dollar company. The dynamics change. And so you go from being a big fish in a small pond to a big fish in an ocean, and all of a sudden you're just a stupid fish and there's sharks all around you. Nobody cares that you're a fish anymore. So I can understand why some people might want to retire and step away. For Todd, I think this is one of the immediate questions that's come up. So I agree. On Reddit, the top comment under the news post for Hines' retirement reads, "I know there are only small pieces of a bigger whole, but it's going to be so weird when both he and Todd are retired." That sentiment has echoed throughout the thread. To many, quote, "Todd and Pete are what Bethesda is," observes one fan. "I can't imagine what a Bethesda game would look like without Todd's influence. Todd is either Bethesda, or rather Todd is Bethesda and the Elder Scrolls is Todd." I agree. He's crucial to these groups and to these franchises. He's a big player in them. Absolutely. So I do agree. Things are going to be really weird when he's gone. Question is whether he goes. I could see Todd continuing to work on games until his last day. I mean, I don't think he's tiring of it. I don't think he's sick of it. It's his passion. I don't think many people have like a strong passion for being the head of publishing. I don't think that that's necessarily like somebody's career goal is to be the head of publishing for some company. So it's probably less of a labor of love for him. For Todd, I do think that it's more of a labor of love. I think he really does love it. As he said in this interview from August, so this is before the launch of Starfield, right before, people started asking Todd. Starting off with the game's announcement in June of 2018, Todd said he often wonders if it was the right thing to announce it so early. Quote, "I've asked myself that a lot. I don't know. I probably would have announced it more casually." Todd also confirmed the Elder Scrolls 6 and whatever it's called, does already have a codename, but he would not reveal it. As for what he could say, Todd said the game aims to, quote, "fill that role of the ultimate fantasy world simulator," end quote, again, whatever that means. And there are different ways to accomplish that given the time that has passed. Probably technologically pushing it, but also knowing what Bethesda is capable of after seeing Starfield. I'm not getting my hopes up. Todd, who is 53 now, and said, "It's weird for me to think about retirement, something he believes is a long, long way off." So maybe one or two games, one or two more games. "I want to do it forever," he said. "I think the way I work will probably evolve, but look at 70-year-old Mario creator and Nintendo legend Shigeru Miyamoto. He's still doing it." I agree. I don't think you have to stop working in game development when you turn 60 or 65. You can still work in the industry, but it will change. You're not going to be grinding. You're not going to be working 18-hour days, but you can still be involved in a more creative way, a creative overview way. And I think that that's probably how his role evolves. You can see he's an executive producer on the new Indiana Jones game, which looks really, really good. And I think that that's probably where he lands. I think you might start to see, like maybe the Elder Scrolls 6 is the last game that he is the like director on, and then he probably hands off the reins to other capable guys at Bethesda Game Studios, and then he just takes a creative director, or not creative director, a executive producer role within those games, where he comes in, provides creative feedback once a month or once every couple of weeks. He comes and has a meeting with the game designers, and that's what he does. And he just bounces from studio to studio, offering his creative input, and that's his job. Really great job, gets to work on tons of games all at the same time, and I think that that could work great. I think Bethesda is going to be fighting an uphill battle with that, because I think some of the people that are potentially going to be replacing Todd are not as, how to say this without sounding really mean. I think there are processes and there are philosophies within BGS specifically that are woefully outdated. And you can see that whenever they go and speak at GDC. You can see that in the articles and documentaries that have been made after the fact. And even in interviews with former developers from BGS, just talking openly about the design process. Even little things such as not using design documentation in the creation of a game like Starfield is so baffling. It boggles the mind. And yet they just casually say it like it's no big deal, or like it's a fun quirk of their studio. And yet most of the problems of Starfield could have been resolved if they had design documentation. So it's like bragging about your biggest fault. You know, it's like just casually mentioning, yeah, I mean, I like to huff paint and glue, and it just, yeah, it's one of the things that people know about me. It's like, what? Yeah, while I'm driving, I like to put on beer goggles and, huff glue. People are like, wait, that's bad. You shouldn't be bragging about that. That's bad. Well, it's just something I do. It's something that's kind of cool, unique to me kind of thing. That you shouldn't be bragging about that. Stop that. It's one of those weird things where they're bragging about one of their biggest issues. Creation Engine needs to be retired. I think at this point, with all of the stuff with Creation Engine, it is in and of itself an albatross around Bethesda's neck. And one of the promises and things that they've said so many times is that the Creation Engine allows them to work faster. And the thing is, like, I don't think that that's necessarily true anymore, especially as we've seen more and more things showcased of what other engines and tool sets are capable of doing. There was the showcase where they showed what Unreal Engine 5.3 was capable of doing with like the nanite landscapes and stuff. Like, look at this. Look what it's able to do dynamically with procedurally generated landscapes made in a matter of minutes, not weeks or years or anything, minutes. Absolute madness. Then like, look at this. They're able to go and add all sorts of topographical detail, volumetric lighting, all of this stuff. And I think these are the tool sets, and these are the reasons why like CD Projekt Red dumped their Red engine in favor of this, even though they have an amazing set of tools that they used for Cyberpunk 2077. They have chosen to go with this tool set instead because it's so freaking capable. And yet Bethesda's saying that, nope, we are choosing to stay with the Creation Engine because it helps us work faster. When I think it's pretty clear that it's probably not that much faster than what any of the other tool sets could do. Chaos Panel Cloth Editor. Crazy, just casually. All sorts of reflections. Like, if you're going to say that quickness of work is what you care about, how do you argue that the Creation Engine is faster in creating environments than this? Watch this. Watch this. You want another cliff? Plop. Dynamically adds logs over top. For somebody to hand design this and place it and put all the rubble around would be so freaking chaotic. And then watch how they alter it after this. Like, watch this. It's like, oh, let's tweak it a little bit.
So let's say a designer comes by, wants to direct the player to drive to the left. Jacob can simply move the assembly to the right, and everything updates to accommodate that change. Game design is iterative, So let's say the designer comes back, wants to give the player the choice of going left or right again. Jacob can simply move the assembly back over. Now, the artist who created this assembly also added some additional handles that Jacob can use to art direct where rock slides occur. Allows him to customize the piece a little bit more, make it a little easier for the Rivian to drive by. So we started by handcrafting that original part of the level to set the visuals and art direction for the entire piece, and then built out procedural tools that allowed the team to create a much larger play space much more quickly. Now let's see how we can use these procedural tools to make larger sweeping changes to the environment.
Watch this.
So Jacob, let's start by removing some of the trees in this area.
Absolutely, that's easy enough actually.
All right, a little too much. Let's add some trees back in.
Okay.
And let's also add in some cliff formations, give it a little bit more variability. So the procedural systems are all deterministic. As Jacob is experimenting with different sets of input parameters, once he finds a set that he likes, he can always go back to it and get out exactly the same results. And the procedural systems aren't just placing trees and rocks, but also fog cards, bugs, birds, everything that's needed to bring this environment to life. And everything that you've seen here works at scale. This environment is 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers. If we hide all of the procedural elements, we can see that original hand-built area about 200 meters by 200 meters. We believe that there will always be the need for hand-building environments, so we design these procedural systems to be tools for artists that work in concert with hand-built content.
I don't know how on earth Bethesda can look at this and just be like, yeah, our tool set's better. Especially when they got roasted over the technological shortcomings of Starfield. I mean, even now, there are still clips going up. We watched a Nick Tech video earlier in the stream. Nick Tech, great creator. You should go sub to him. Absolutely makes hilarious comparison videos showcasing some of these games and the side-by-sides. It's madness. But Nick Tech, he did a side-by-side showcasing Star Citizen, and one of the things they dropped, and it really makes you see just how crazy like lame Starfield's technological offerings are in comparison. Like, the vision of Starfield, I think, is epic and is compelling. I do think if they were able to deliver what Starfield wanted to do, it would have been amazing and people would have loved it. However, I just don't think Bethesda is capable of doing it. It does appear that the team behind Star Citizen is capable of delivering it as they've gone through all this crazy rebuilding of like their own engine and stuff. It's crazy. Seamless space to surface transitions, no load screens, nothing. Just wildly impressive data streaming. The music's so good too. Oh God. He's gonna cut back. He did him so dirty. And then the epic music sweeping, beautiful landscapes. Back to the load screen. Yeah, you can play Star Citizen right now. Yeah, you can go play it right now. And then back to the wide sweeping shots. Nick, I gotta hand it to you. This was brilliant. This was brilliant going, and like every time Starfield hits a load screen, go back to the epic sweeping shots for Star Citizen and then come back in when it's done loading. It's just fantastic. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, and the ships are actual ships. It's not a separately loaded environment. They're actually moving you through space with it. It's crazy. No, it has its own launcher. It's not through Steam. Look at this. Then the load screen. Before it, sit down. Take off. Yeah. Spaceship time. Initializing. Take off. Blast off. And then load screen. Like, again, the vision of Starfield, really compelling. There's a reason people were hyped for it. They just were not the group to do it, and they didn't have the tools to do it. And part of that, I mean, that's still, to be clear, still lands on their shoulders. It's still your responsibility to make sure that you are able to deliver on what you're promising and what you're trying to pitch. As Todd Howard's famous saying goes, they can do anything, they just can't do everything. Except with Starfield, they seemingly tried to do everything. And they couldn't do it. They needed to try and do a lot less, and then they might have stood a chance. So all of this to say, little sidetracked, all of this to say, I do think Todd is going to stay around. I don't think he's going to like disconnect or go retire, and Bethesda will be just left screwed. Unless, like, barring, God forbid, any sort of health issues or something that forces him out. I do think he will stay and work into his old age, but I do think he'll take on like that Miyamoto type of role. I think he's going to become less directly involved and be much more passively involved. He'll come in, offer his design thoughts, and a lot of the actual minutia of game design is going to land on Emil Pagliarulo's shoulders and the other team. That might be a great thing, might be a bad thing. I have my own opinions on it. I don't think Emil is the sort of fresh perspective that BGS needs to be competitive in the modern day. That's just my personal opinion, but I would love to be convinced otherwise. I just think what they're doing right now is not working, and I think keeping the old guard in charge is not a great strategy. That's my humble opinion. He took my thing.